Welcome to the F3 podcast where we discuss all things that pertain to faith, family, and finances. And remember, no subject is off limits. All right. We are your hosts today. I am the lowly but humble Dr. Lionel M. Blair Sr., and I'm sitting next to the grand, the wonderful, the beautiful, the sainted mother herself, Saint Jasmine the First. Dr. Jasmine Blair. We got a good one for you today, as always.
Listen, welcome everybody to the F3 podcast. If this is your first time with us, be sure to like it, subscribe, and share. Hit that notification bell so you'll be notified every time we have a new episode. If you're taking us with you on the go, definitely you can hit that notification button there as well. If not, be sure to download us where you listen to your favorite podcast. Check out the link. If you have a question you want to ask us, a show topic, go ahead and drop us a voicemail. We'll answer it here because we'll talk about what your pastor wants. So we've got a very good topic today. As society is adapting to what they call the new normal after the pandemic, we've seen changes in every facet of society, and the church is no different. A lot of churches did not reopen. A lot of churches reopened differently. The way that we've had to do everything has changed. People got sanitized. I mean, I don't know. We've been had sanitizer since we started doing ministry because, you know, but now we are in the digital age. We're already in the digital age, but all the pastors have said, Facebook and the internet was the devil. Now they're actually on the internet now. And so it poses the question, are we at the end of the mega church age? Because a lot of people did not return back to church, after this. Go ahead, you put it up. A lot of people didn't return to church after this, especially a lot of the senior citizens. They're still, giving their tithes and offerings from home. They're still watching from home. They're still joining from Zoom because they don't want to go out and put themselves at risk. When you talk about 5,000, 10,000 people, they're referring to some of these as super spreader events. So regardless of how you feel about the pandemic, the reality is church as normal has changed. And I've noticed in some of the videos I've seen on social media of some of the larger mega churches, you see a big curtain because ain't nobody sitting in them seats back there.
Yeah.
And they have not, a lot of them haven't even come back to 50% capacity in the building since the pandemic because they have people, they out of wisdom or fear or whatever, they're at home watching and participating as opposed to coming into the building. And so now with all this empty space, we're seeing it on a regular basis, coupled with us on the brink of our generation, the millennials, and then you've got Generation Z. A lot of these people either aren't religious or, they got jobs, they're doing other stuff. They're not making church the priority that the previous two generations did. So
Right.
are we at the end of the mega church age? There was another pastor, I can't remember his name, but he had a mega church and he ended up basically leaving. He didn't close the church. He set somebody else in place and he went and started another ministry that was smaller because he said God dealt with him and told him, hey, this is the way that this is not the way I want you to be doing ministry.
It's Francis Chan, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is not the way I want you to be doing ministry. There should be more a community. People should know each other. So he put somebody else in place and he started something smaller. He says a pulpit, but he walks around, he sits on the stage. It's more community. They know each other.
Right.
It's not this huge church that he had. It's more of an intimate environment. So are we at the end of the mega church age? I was talking to one of our spiritual daughters about a month or two ago, and they said, I'm not trying to be funny, but when it becomes 5,000, 10,000 people, do people really have the chance to know their pastor like that? Even if there's a team of pastors or elders,
Yeah.
how can you really get to know somebody when there's 10,000 people?
Yeah.
At what point do you break it into smaller sections so that people can really grow as a community?
Right.
That tight knit feeling is something that a lot of people are wanting. What do you think about that?
Well, it's about having services
Mm,
instead of being a real community, which the early church was. Um, yeah, we come together and we worship God, but you know, during biblical times, the Bible says they had all things in common. You understand? They was a community. They shared life with one another,
Mm-hmm.
right? They shared life with one another. So it wasn't just we come to church,
Mm-hmm.
um well we come to have church, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and we just go home and go our separate ways, and it was a bunch of cliques, and and all of that kind of stuff. No, everyone knew each other intimately. They broke bread from house to house. They fellowship. Not only did they pray, they ate together, they went from house to house, all of that kind. You don't see that in churches today.
No.
The only time people gather is on Sunday mornings and Wednesday nights. Okay, but if you don't know if you don't know your fellow congregants outside of the church building on Sunday and Wednesdays, then you're not living up to the model that God originally wanted the church to be.
Mm.
Okay, so we have to learn to be a community, and it's hard to be that when you have a church full of 60,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? And we're not against mega churches.
Right.
We're not against mega churches, but see, if you're gonna have a mega church, you need to have mega provision for the people. Okay, you need to have a bunch of pastors. People need to be broken up in groups, or
A
something.
bunch of
A
pastors.
bunch of them, because see, pastoring is not preaching on the pulpit on Sunday morning. That's not pastoring. Okay,
Mm.
you study a shepherd and what a shepherd does. A shepherd is among the sheep. Okay,
Mm.
shepherds smell like sheep. Yeah, I said it. Shepherds smell like sheep. So I think that you know people are realizing that there's more options outside of Sunday morning traditional shouting, dancing, hooping, and all of that kind of stuff. But I've been saying this, and I've been saying this for a while now, and y'all don't listen to little old Blair because my name ain't in lights. But I'm telling you, a lot of y'all are going to be forced to unify. A lot of you are going to be
Mm-hmm.
forced to come together
That's right.
or shut down,
Oh.
or shut down, you know, or you can become a property of the government, whatever's your choice, whatever floats your boat. All right. But I'm telling you, a lot of you are going to be forced to go by God's model, or you're going to become irrelevant in the new move of God because you think the new move of God is inside of a church building. But see, God is moving outside of that now,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because see, y'all say the church is a building. Y'all say the church is a building, and the building is necessary. Okay. And it's even more necessary if you're doing more than just having church. But the church is the church is a people,
Mm-hmm.
right? A church is a people. So whether you gather in a building or you gathered in a house, whether you gathered in a park,
Mm-hmm.
or wherever it is that you're gathered, okay, that's where you congregate.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, that's where you congregate at, right? So we gotta stop measuring growth just by numbers,
Because numbers ain't gonna tell the whole story.
right? Because see, you can have a church full of babies, and that's what most of the churches are. They are a church full of babies. They are large. They are enlarged daycare centers, and it's no disrespect, because some believers will never grow up. Some believers will never grow up. So there's a provision for you, all right, and the provision is a pastor. But there are other ways to gather that God is highlighting. I saw a man of God on a social media. He's on my friends list, and this man has a church. It looked like I don't know if it's in his basement or whatever. This man at least got about 30 to 40 chairs in there. I mean, he had a nice setup, and he had room in there and everything like that. It was a really 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 nice setup. You,
Mm.
you understand what I'm saying? Everybody everybody ain't called to have a mega ministry. See, a
Hmm.
lot of y'all pastors and senior leaders, you keep pushing yourself to have something bigger instead of really building the quality of what you already have.
That part.
Because see, a lot of y'all want to grow, 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 but you don't have enough mature people established to help maintain the growth.
Right.
And then what happens? Your ministry becomes a revolving door because there's not enough other matured, established leaders and believers in place to help maintain what you have established.
That part.
Okay. And then, from there, listen, I don't want a mega church.
Mm-mm.
I just don't. I like more intimate settings.
Mm-hmm.
You know, pastors bring us in to teach their leaders and to train their people. We've been to house gatherings before. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we've been to house gatherings. We've been to small intimate settings. Leaders have brought us in just to come talk.
And you know what? I've seen God move more powerfully in some of those house settings than they have in some of those ministry settings.
Yeah,
Now, don't get me wrong. God has moved tremendously, but in some of those house settings, you see people more free, people getting healed, delivered. They're getting the Holy Ghost. They're getting their gifts reactivated. Those intimate settings have saved people's lives.
yeah. Because some people ain't gonna come to your church,
That's right.
but they'll come to somebody's house. And there's a provision for everybody. Again, we're not we're not discounting the traditional local church setting, but you cannot limit God to just that.
Exactly. You definitely can.
Because everybody talking about a house, a house, a house, but house in scripture also means lineage. House in scripture also means the house of David, the house of Jacob. It means lineage.
And what's interesting is when you look at biblical times, outside of the synagogues, most of what took place in the establishment of the New Testament was in people's houses.
That's true. That's true.
The friends brought the man to the house.
Yeah.
They went from house to house. They went to this house, that house. Jesus stayed in this person's house. You see more ministry because we have to understand the time and the culture. It was still politically taboo and dangerous to be a believer. So no, they weren't we have not gotten in the times of the New Testament when it was written. We hadn't gotten to the times yet for the amphitheaters and things like that where they had all these big open services.
Right.
They were still going from house to house to small groups, to small meetings and campfires. That was the kind of ministry they had. So of course, the model has adopted, but when the mega model's not working, I believe that had its time and place. I believe we still will have some, and that's great. But I believe the way that we've seen it in America, I believe that was an age or a season. And now we're entering into something different where we've got to go back to foundation and building solid before we get big.
Right.
And I'm talking about as a body. Because the problem is some places got too big too fast. And you actually see this with the early church if you study your history. It wasn't a dangerous thing that a lot of people were at it. The problem was the influx of non-believers that were at it. They didn't have enough people who were mature to properly train these people. Then they started having these different problems, and Paul had to write these letters, had to address certain things they didn't have to address before because they had this influx of immature people. And we're to an age in the church, I believe we're seeing a lot of that. A lot of the church hurt, a lot of the scandals, a lot of the mess that's going on is because we've had an influx of immature people who were not properly trained. But as God is humbling the church and doing a cleanup, now we've got to train people right. So as we build up and we build out and we get to that place of masses again, that we don't have to have a whole cleanup again, because people aren't mature enough to properly train those that are coming in so they have an understanding of how they should live instead of just causing all kinds of chaos.
And this is why you cannot measure the effectiveness of your leadership by the numbers you have in your ministry.
That's good.
Numbers are good. I'm not discounting numbers, but you cannot measure the effectiveness of your leadership by how many people join your church. Because if everybody in your church is babies, first of all, how for all you apostles and you bishops and all this other stuff, how are you apostolic and most of your people are immature?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm.
How are
Come
you?
on.
See, this is why a lot of people could not walk with the apostles. The apostles had to have go-betweens between them and the people. You understand? Because, and see, this is why the apostles had to have elders and bishops in place. Paul told Timothy how to govern in Ephesus.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he says this is what you do. This is how you measure the readiness of the bishops. If a man wants to be a bishop, this is his qualification, and all of them are natural. All of them are natural. Why? Because you have to deal with you have to deal with the lives of the people.
Mm-hmm.
And the church in Philippi, Paul wrote to the bishops and the deacons.
Mm-hmm.
Had more than one bishop in there. Bishop means overseer, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So those who are congregational overseers. The complete Jewish Bible calls a bishop a congregational leader. Mm-hmm. Why am I saying all of this? I'm saying all of this because when it comes to the life and the maturity of the people, that has to be priority. The numbers will always come later.
Right.
But if the numbers are your goal and if the numbers are your measuring stick, listen, you're going to be sick when you start losing folk, because you will lose people.
Absolutely.
And it's always going to be a problem. It's always going to be drama when people exit. All this kinds of stuff. Okay, because, and I believe that's why there's a lot of drama when people exit too, because leaders measure themselves and the effectiveness of their leadership and how good they feel about their leadership by the size of their congregation and the presentation of their building and all of that stuff. See, we never cared about a lot of that stuff. And people have tried to mock us for it. Mm-hmm. People have tried to, make fun of us for it. Oh, he ain't no apostle, they ain't no apostles. But your people come to us for deliverance. Your people come to us for healing because your powerless self can't get them healed. Mm-hmm. With all your tongues and all your prophecy, you still can't get them free. Something's wrong with that. But anyway, so leaders, you got to be open to another way. Okay, you got to be open to another way. You don't have to have 1,000 churches under you to become an apostle. You don't have to be a spiritual father to be an apostle. You understand what I'm saying? Because every apostle is not a spiritual father and mother. I know y'all think so, but that ain't biblical. That was Paul's model, not every apostle's model. Anyway, so we have to. There are different measuring sticks. All right, there are different measuring sticks for effective ministry. And y'all keep trying to idolize these mega church. Listen, we know mega church leaders and stuff like that. Listen, mega church come with mega problems. One pastor told me, he was like, brother, listen, stay the size you are and max out everything that you have as long as you can.
Right.
All right, because see, when you start getting into mega church and big, huge buildings and getting into all these millions of dollars, that stuff
big,
comes
huge bills and big, huge audits and big, huge severance. It's a lot that goes into that.
And he was telling me, he was like, brother, this stuff is a headache. Mm-hmm. And he was telling me some of the leaders he know right now. He was like, man, there's one pastor, he wants to sell his building. It's just a headache for him. Mm-hmm. And he was like, man, I know this other pastor, man, this is going on, that's going on. This is what's stressing him out. And all of that kind of stuff. See, y'all be looking at stuff that looks glamorous, but listen, during the pandemic, and I bet you a lot of y'all don't even know this, but during the pandemic, these mega churches was losing so much money they resorted to selling gummies, gummies. And a lot of them in trouble now too. A lot of them got in trouble for that because they was doing it somewhat illegally.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of done illegally, and some of the paperwork on writing and stuff like that. So they got the lawyers, trying to settle all that stuff now because they was trying to make some of their money back. So they was selling CBD gummies illegally in the church.
Jesus.
And some of the biggest names, I can name some right now, and you will know exactly who I'm talking about. Some of your idols. Okay, bishops and pastors and doctors and all this other stuff. Okay, they was practically selling dope.
Jesus Christ.
To keep their church open, because most of these mega churches started struggling. Why? Because the pandemic kept people home. The pandemic kept people home. People stopped coming to church. People was being hit financially. They stopped paying their tithes and offering,
And the church suffered.
So listen, if you are a small or a medium-sized church, be happy with where you are. Okay? If you're maxing out seats and stuff, just have a second service.
Basically,
you don't need a new building.
Nope.
You don't need a new building. You just don't. And if you got extra rooms and extra stuff, listen, open a business, open something.
Have a second service and have a third if you need to. There should be enough. If the church is that big, there should be enough pastors and enough people to be able to facilitate the logistics so you can have a third service if you need to.
You got to preach at every last one.
No.
And preach every
Somebody
Sunday.
else can preach.
Well, I'm so glad I love the structure we have because I don't have to preach.
Nobody should be preaching 3 services.
No, I ain't preaching 3 services. You hear me? I ain't preaching no 3 services. I ain't doing it. You blessed if I preach 2 services. I'm not doing that. We got enough apostles, elders, and prophets, okay, in our ministry. And guess what? We can go on vacation if we want. We go on vacation. Why? Because we have capable leaders that's able to run stuff.
Capable.
The only thing I do is oversee. That's all I do is oversee. I don't run a whole lot of stuff. I just oversee.
And that's how it should be. Eventually, you should get to a place where you're able to spread the responsibility.
Yeah.
But see, this is why this mega church age is going to end, because see, there is a lot of that. However, it's impersonal. And these next generations that are coming up, we're looking for something different. We're looking for a more personal, more intimate touch, an intimate connection that's really going to speak to us, not just some person we see all the time, but we never get to talk to. That's really not relationship, and that's not what this was designed to be.
Right.
And so, though we're going through a transition, the church is going through a humbling, but there's also going to be a lot more power. And again, God bless the mega church structure for where it has worked, for where it has been a blessing for many. We're not saying that it wasn't, but what we are saying is for a lot of people that are coming up, that model is not what they need to really get connected to God. Any closing remarks?
If you are in ministry because you want to have a big ministry, you might as well stay home. Stick or just stick with your leader and just just work under your leader. If you're in this for what is going to make you look like, because really this ain't glamorous. This ain't glamorous like that. And listen, if you measure yourself by all your favorite idols, baby, they struggling with stuff they will never tell you. Listen, we know leaders. Okay, listen. They struggle with stuff that they will never tell you. All right, this struggle with stuff. Why? because they have a big building and a congregation, mega responsibility, and they're managing things that are becoming outdated. I'm just saying. So when we talk about the end of the mega church age, we're talking about the end of that measurement of what's going to be what is considered success in ministry. That's what we're talking about, because small is going to be the new big.
Mm-mm.
Small is the new big. All right, you're going to be able to do a lot more with far less if you would just heed the voice of God.
Mm-mm. Well, listen, we hope you've enjoyed this episode of the F3 podcast. Be sure to hit like, subscribe, and share. And until next time on the F3 podcast, goodbye.